This is St. Louis on the Air from St. Louis Public Radio. I'm Elaine Cha.
At one point, we were near a beach with nearly 1 million penguins.
Wow.
So my favorite place ever is the backyard.
I evolved from dinosaurs to snakes to birds.
I had a pretty strong outdoor background, just not really in birding.
Today, bird is the word. That's because we're spending this hour talking about the increasingly popular pastime of bird watching. So later in the hour, we'll talk with two St. Louis-based birders about their experiences. We'll also take your calls and emails about favorite local birding spots and most memorable sightings. But first, on Christmas Day, Taka Yanagimoto, who is the St. Louis Cardinals director of photography, was alerted to a cardinal of a different sort in his family's backyard, a male specimen with a rare mutation that makes its feathers yellow instead of red. Since that first sighting, Taka has been capturing images of this brightly yellow fellow. When I spoke with him on Friday, he shared the moment his family first discovered the unique bird.
So the first sighting actually happened on Christmas Day, and I was in our basement. My daughter and wife were in our sunroom, and my daughter spotted the bird and with her phone thought it was something interesting, so she took a picture. They called out for me to come up quickly to see what it was. Mm-hmm. I ran upstairs, but he had flown away. So we did a quick Google search and thought, oh, this is interesting.
Okay.
And so he showed up the next day on the 26th is when I got my first look at him.
Oh, I see.
And at that point, I had a camera somewhat ready and was able to lie in wait.
So I understand that you and your family have come up with a nickname for this bird. Taka, what is that?
His name is Ray.
Mm-hmm.
Ray. And we thought a little bit about some various names, but given the weather at that time, which was cloudy and overcast for those few days, we decided that Ray seemed appropriate for a ray of light and his color, and that was it.
Mm-hmm. And had you been a bird watcher in any way before this?
I would say no.
Yeah.
Just, we have the feeders, and occasionally we might glance back at them and just to enjoy nature.
Okay.
But nothing, I'm not an ornithologist.
Yeah. So has this opened up a new area of interest for you?
I would say I've done a lot more research on birds of Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
Ironically enough, my wife had given me, unbeknownst to what was going to happen, the Birds of Missouri field guidebook for Christmas. So I had that and just been reading that and studying and going down the rabbit hole of cardinals and other birds.
Birding has actually become very popular in the last year or so. We spoke with a couple of librarians to go over the best books of 2024, and one of the ones that was noted is a book by Amy Tan. It is a nonfiction book, and it is about backyard birds. So as we're thinking about what people are interested in doing, if someone were to want to take photographs of the birds that they're seeing, is there any advice that you would offer them?
Well, the first thing that you need to have, obviously, is a good bird feed setup. Mm-hmm. So we have two bird feeders about 10, 15 yards apart with the right kind of seed that will attract our local birds. Mm-hmm. And a component of that was finding the seed that would not attract squirrels.
Okay,
we have a lot of squirrels, and they would eat the feed and destroy our feeders. So we came across the right type of feed for the birds, and that was step number one. And the other is just patience, is really just kind of waiting and tracking the time of days in which they come to eat.
Okay.
And obviously, most importantly, is the technology. You have to have the equipment in terms of your lens, the focal reach, to be able to capture the bird in a way, certainly in motion. So, your gear. Professional birders have long focal lengths on their lenses and have a lot of patience.
Yeah. So is there something in particular that this new subject is bringing out of you, not only as a photographer, but maybe as a resident of St. Louis and this region?
I think there's a lot of just, as I look back, 2014 would have been the last, if you look at on Google, the last sighting in Missouri was in 2014. So just curiosity about things that are around us in nature and an overall interest in wildlife and just realizing just how cool it is, really. And then seeing something like Ray, the uniqueness of it. As a photographer, especially in sports, you like to be the one to capture the image.
Right,
you know? So being able to capture, Ray is it's kind of cool.
Can you describe for us what your favorite photo so far has been?
I think the one that we collectively liked as a family and put it on our holiday card is Ray sitting on our landscape lighting, and he's looking up, almost like he's posing, looking up to the sky, and there's a little small piece of foliage, green, almost like a green blade of grass, kind of growing through the rocks, right, through the landscape rocks, and he's just sort of staring up at the sky. And I got down on the ground. I shot him from probably about 20, 30 feet away, very quietly, and it's just a very nice portrait of him. He's not eating. He's nothing on his face. It's just a very nice, quiet, serene photo that is it's very calm and very peaceful.
What would the caption for that be?
Just chilling in 2025.
Okay.
Yeah.
And have you noticed that Ray goes after a specific kind of food? Are there certain things that you've put out especially for him?
So initially, no. I think we're sticking with the type of food that has some hotness to it, to keep away the squirrel. I'll give a plug to Wild Birds Unlimited. They provide the food. I mean, not on a sponsorship level, but I'm saying that's where we go to get our food. And it's dense in berries and other things that he enjoys, and as well as the other 10, 15 species that we have now in our backyard. So, yeah.
Does he seem to notice you? Maybe he was posing.
There was a series of shots where I opened up the sliding door in our sunroom and I sat there, and he was probably 10 feet away, and he came closer, tilted his head, and looked at me, maybe somewhat curiously. I would assume I have to remain very, very still. The lens that I use, it's a white lens, and I know that their perception of color is 20 times greater than ours. So any sort of slight movement, and he would have flown away. So I think he was more curious, just looked. I don't pretend to be a bird caller or a whisperer. Just be still as you can.
Yeah.
And just fire away.
That was my conversation with Taka Yanagimoto, a St. Louis photographer who experienced what's considered a 1-in-a-million event of seeing a rare yellow cardinal. You can see Taka's photos of Ray the cardinal on our website. That's stlonair.show. And this hour, we're hearing from bird watchers across the region. One of them is St. Louis resident Rad Widmer, who's been a bird watcher for 40 years.
Been interested in the outdoors just in general for a long time, and birds just seem like the best way or the easiest way to kind of connect with what was out there. They tend to be a lot of them around, and they're fairly easy to observe. And there's also you don't just look at them, but you listen, and they have interesting calls and songs, and it's kind of like endless. You can learn. Every time you go out, you can learn something new.
We also heard from St. Louis resident Matt Schamberger, who has been birding for about 22 years.
It was actually my ex-wife got me into birding. She said to me one day, I went to this cool place called Riverlands, which is up near Alton, Illinois, and there's a lot of birds up there, and I think you would like it. And at the time, I was into animals and wildlife, but I wasn't really into birds per se. And it must have been the right time of year. It was probably fall, I guess. And there was just lots and lots of different species of ducks and geese and, of course, bald eagles and other things. And immediately I was just hooked. I couldn't believe that not only you could see that much stuff, but especially that she had an ID book and you could ID them. you could know what you were looking at, which species were which, and that sort of thing. And so, yeah, that first day I was hooked.
Now, this year, Matt participated in the Christmas Bird Count in Collinsville, Illinois, at several parks, including at Cahokia Mounds.
I like that it's a little bit of you feel like you're contributing to science. That is true, because you are helping to kind of like take a snapshot in time of what birds are being seen in a specific region, and then lots of other people are doing that in their own regions. But I like doing that. You're out with people, and that it's a little bit of a competition in a very fun way, because you're trying to see as many things as you can see that day. So you're kind of competing against yourself. You're kind of competing against other people that are working other segments of the count circle, but there's no prize for it, I guess, other than bragging rights. But it's just really fun to do, again, because it's social and it's somewhat like a game, I guess, to see how many things you can see.
We'll talk more about the Christmas bird count and bird watching in the St. Louis region after a short break. Stay with us. This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio.
If you have a smart speaker, you have access to the entire world of NPR and St. Louis Public Radio. All the latest news and all the captivating stories. Activate our voices with yours by telling your smart speaker to play St. Louis Public Radio.
Welcome back. Last month on our Best Books of 2024 show, St. Louis Public Library's Ted Reedy told us that birding in books of various genres was a trending topic. The findings of the 2022 National Survey of Fishing, Hunting, and Wildlife Associated Recreation make that no surprise. 96 million Americans, which comes to about 3 in 10 people, participate in ornithological observation, whether in their backyards or in spaces outdoors. That, combined with the conclusion just this Sunday of the National Audubon Society's 125th Christmas bird count, as well as this winter's sighting of a rare yellow northern cardinal in St. Louis, we figured it's the perfect time to talk about bird watching with 2 longtime birders. And we want you to be part of this conversation too. Where have you made your most thrilling sightings? What is it that you love about the birding process? Give us a call here at 314-382-8255. That's 382-TALK. Or send us an email at talk@stlpr.org. So let's meet our 2 guests for today. First, we have Bill Rowe. Bill is a past president and board member of the St. Louis Audubon Society, and he's a birder with decades of experience. Bill, welcome to St. Louis on the Air.
Thank you, Elaine. Glad to be here. I love the show.
We also have Ben Koenig. Ben is a St. Louis native and a birder whose passion has taken him to very many places, which we'll hear about. Ben, welcome to you as well. Thank you. So glad that you all made it through this weather. So we heard earlier about the yellow cardinal. What is your reaction to that, Bill?
Well, my reaction is that it's not a rare species. Mm-hmm. In fact, cardinals are like everywhere, including on the ball field. But it is a rare condition. Mm-hmm. It's called xanthism, and it means that things that are red turn yellow instead of red, and it's due to a mutation. Mm-hmm. But the same might happen, and I've seen cardinals like this that were partly white. Oh. And so when they're partly white and partly red, they look like peppermint candy.
Okay. Oh, that would be even more.
That's just as cool.
Right. And seasonally appropriate.
Cooler, so I'm not upstaging that one. But
Ben, have you seen any variations on cardinals in your time of birding?
I have not.
No. So there's something to put onto your list, perhaps?
Well, my take is that many birds are already frustrating enough to locate. Okay. I don't need to go after these super rare 1 in a million birds. I have enough on my plate. But this cardinals photographer was very lucky to see a beautiful yellow cardinal.
Right. Yeah. And what a coincidence that he's the cardinals photographer of all things. Right. So the Christmas bird count, Something that I do want to note is that I received an email from a listener on Christmas Eve, so December 23rd, about the Christmas bird count, and I had not been familiar with that. And as it turns out, as noted earlier, the 125th one just ended on Sunday. Bill, you know quite a bit about this. Tell us about the Christmas bird count and what it is.
Well, okay. It's a little complicated. It may take a couple of minutes. It was actually started in 1900. So it was essentially the first of the things they call citizen science, where anybody can go out and contribute, and the data are useful. And it was started by an ornithologist named Frank Chapman, who wanted to try that as an alternative to going out and hunting birds on Christmas Day or whenever near then. And so ever since then, it's been both a tradition and a useful contribution to the data set about North American birds. Kind of a snapshot, as I believe Rad said or Matt said, in early winter, of how things are all over the United States, but also even to our north, Canada, and then south in Latin America. And it's run this way, that every area is a circle, 15 miles across, and it's subdivided and monitored by a compiler, one person who manages the count. And then different groups of people go out and go bird watching all day in different subsections of it. And then their results are added together by the compiler and submitted to National Audubon Society.
And this is how we know what bird populations are doing.
Yeah, it gives an index of bird populations, and there are some things that aren't controllable about it, like the weather, for instance. So if you have a day full of sleet and rain and ice, you're not going to be able to find as much. So you have to factor that in.
And I understand it really is an all-day, like a 24-hour activity?
Not really, because it's really from sunup to sundown.
Okay.
But each count, the counts cover a 3-week period, and you can pick any day to do that. Some of the counts have a specific day that they have done forever, like the one I just did was up at that Riverlands area.
Right. Tell us
but that's on the 1st of January.
Yeah.
And that's the traditional day for that count.
Okay.
So some people, like my son, who is an excellent birder, doesn't go on it because he will not give up New Year's Eve.
Oh, sure. Okay, priorities
so
here.
So he won't show up. Sorry, Matt, I didn't mean to say that in public. But.
So what is it that makes it so fun, Bill, especially because you've done quite a number of these?
Yes. Well, one thing that I've thought of that makes birding so much fun in general, and the Christmas counts in particular, is that you kind of, people who haven't been out birding much, they think of it as, okay, it's communing with nature. Yes. They think quiet, contemplative, mindfulness, and so on. Yes. But it's also real exhilarating, because birds are out there all over the place, and they're popping up when you least expect them. They may be easy to watch, difficult to watch. They may be easy to identify or nearly impossible, depending on the conditions. And you turn around and something else has jumped up into a tree, or you turn around to the lake and something else is swimming by out there in the lake.
Right.
And it's one surprise after another. And I think even if you've done it a lot, and you know pretty much what's going to be there, you never run out of surprises.
And Ben, you were kind of talking about some of the frustration that comes with bird watching without having to try to find one with a mutation. Can you tell us a bit about how you got involved in birding to begin with?
Well, I've always liked to hike and to explore. And birds are all over the place, and I've always appreciated them and noticed them. But it wasn't until quite recently that I decided to start counting birds and making checklists. And I think when you start digging into all the different species that are out there and learning about them, the rabbit hole is so generous that it hooks you. And there was no real moment that I decided I was going to do it. But I guess one day I found myself an avid birder.
Mm-hmm. And were you doing this on your own or with other people?
Usually on my own. It's a great opportunity to walk around, be contemplative, mindful and whatnot, get some exercise.
And are there some places locally that you like to go to on a regular basis?
Yeah, absolutely. Tower Grove Park, I'm sure we've all heard of that. There's sort of an oasis effect being in the middle of a city. A lot of great birds tend to flock there, particularly in the spring. You have a great variety of spring migrants there. It's one of the best places to go around for warblers and birds such as that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We put out a call on social media to get some feel for what other people enjoy about birding, and we heard from Alex, who also mentioned birds at Tower Grove Park. They say Tower Grove Park and Riverlands are probably my two favorite spots. Tower Grove is great for migratory songbirds and Riverlands for just about everything. There's an anticipation of migration and never knowing what you'll find when you go looking. The community aspect is really great as well. I found it to be very welcoming to new birders with more experienced folks helping you locate and ID birds. We also heard from Ellen on Facebook. Ellen wrote, "I've seen a barred owl in my backyard 3 times in the past 3 months, and it's amazing every time. We also have several red-tailed hawks in the neighborhood. I'm in St. John by the airport, and I never expected to see so many big birds around here." So bird watchers out there, where have you made your most exciting finds or sightings, and what is it that you love about the bird watching process? Give us a call at 314-382-8255. That's 314-382-TALK. Now, Bill, I want to come back to you. As Ben was talking about his entry into bird watching, as I understand it, you got started when you were very young. Where did that happen, and what was your introduction to birding?
Okay. Well, it was in the 1950s, Elaine. That's quite a while ago. But I I evolved from dinosaurs to snakes to birds.
Okay.
And it was partly due to proximity because we lived in a little subdivision that wasn't far from some woods, so I could go out there and kind of fool around. And
right.
I got one of the first books I ever got was a field guide, and at that time there was just the one very famous one by Roger Torrey Peterson, who wrote the original field guide, and this was an update of it. It was a super little book, so I could memorize that and then go out looking. But I also got other books by him. He's a great writer and popularizer of this, and he wrote books about bird watching all over North America, what you could find in Arizona, what you could find in the coast of Canada, or what you could find in California, and so on. So it gave me things to daydream about and wish I could see, and got me interested in doing more. And one of these Christmas counts, I did my first one in 1961.
Okay.
Okay, people can measure from that.
Yeah, sure. And was that here in Missouri?
No, that was in Kentucky.
Oh, okay.
With a friend, and hooking in with some folks from Louisville who were out doing the count that day.
Right. So were you taking photographs at all?
Not then.
Okay.
No, it was much later that I started taking some photographs. And now I just have a little bridge camera, they call it, that I keep by my side or hung around my neck.
Right. And
kind of a just in case, which is, if you see something unusual, it's always nice to have evidence of it.
And speaking of that evidence, I mean, Ben, you said that you picked this up a little more recently. Have your bird watching sessions, if we can call them that, have they also involved some sort of documentation of what you've been seeing?
Yes, absolutely. I always carry a large telephoto lens with me. And while I don't need a photo of the bird to count it as an official observation, I don't always get the photo. For me, it really only counts in my heart if I can capture that photo to bring home. It's sort of like, I guess my personal project is to collect a photo of as many species as I can. I have a little, folder, or maybe I'll put together a little book of my photos one day. But
a little album of sorts.
Absolutely, yes.
So we have Ellen who is calling from St. Louis. Ellen, welcome to St. Louis on the Air.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Go ahead.
So I just wanted to share one of my favorite places for birding. I am the current president of St. Louis Audubon Society, and I am also on the board for the World Bird Sanctuary. So birding is near and dear to my heart, and I've been interested in birds since I was in college and took ornithology. So one of my favorite places is Simpson Park, which is in Valley Park, Missouri.
Okay.
And there is a mated pair of bald eagles that have a nest there. I've seen a pair of eaglets in that nest with a good telescope. And in the spring and fall, you can find lots of warblers that are migrating. And because there's a lake there, you can also see lots of waterfowl and shorebirds, egrets, blue herons, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful park. And there's a trail that's about a mile each direction, and it's a great place to go for birding.
And I understand, Ellen, that you volunteer at Eagle Days at the old Chain of Rocks Bridge. What is it about that particular spot that makes it so attractive or appealing to eagles?
Well, they can perch on the ice floes and do their fishing. And so that's, and there are also eagles that are coming from up at Riverlands, the National Audubon at Riverlands, and they come down to that area as well. But in the wintertime, the eagles can fish from the ice floes.
What does that look like?
It's amazing.
Yeah, Bill is laughing over here.
It's just amazing. It's just amazing. I mean, I've seen as many as 8 or 10 of them circling overhead at one time, and it's amazing. When they previously held Eagle Days up on the Chain of Rocks Bridge, I think they planned it for the very coldest day of the year. It was frequently, in the teens or even single digits up there, but it was always still just an amazing time. Lots of people coming and learning about birding, and I've always enjoyed going up there.
And Eagle Days are coming up later this month, I think?
Excuse me?
Are Eagle Days coming up sometime soon?
Yes, they are, and I am driving right now, but I would suggest that you, if you go to Audubon, stlouisaudubon.org, look at our calendar. It will talk about that, and also for Audubon Riverlands, we'll have the dates of Eagle Days and all the events. There's lots of events for families and birders, birders who are avid birders, but also for people who just want to learn a little bit and see some sights. It's just a great time.
Ellen, thank you so much. That really gets at the reason we're talking about this is that there is this surge in interest in birding. On that note, we also have calling from Wildwood, Tom. Tom, welcome to the show.
Good to be with you.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I've been birding for 50 plus years in the St. Louis area since I was 11 years old. And one of the activities that I've recently been involved with is participating in the U.S. Geological Survey's North American Breeding Bird Survey. It's another citizen science type of project. And every spring in June, my wife and I go out and we drive a route. We have two different routes. One's in the Columbia, Illinois area, and one is in the Mark Twain National Forest. And we drive the route, stopping every half mile and identify all the birds we can see or hear in a 3-minute period. And then we send this data into the U.S. Geological Survey. And using this information, they're able to see the status of birds and, unfortunately, the decline of many common breeding birds over the years.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a lot of fun and a chance to get out and drive the country roads, and also makes a really solid contribution to science. I'd encourage anyone who's been birding for a long time to participate in that.
Mm-hmm. And Tom, you said that you do this with your wife.
I do.
So did you happen to meet while you were birding? Was there a romance and birding story there?
Actually, birding was one of our first activities, was one of our first dates.
Oh.
But we were also avid cyclists, and we actually met cycling.
Okay. So wheels and wings, that's a good combination.
Yes.
Tom, thank you so much for calling. Ben, are you familiar with what Tom has just shared, and have you engaged in any similar sort of activities?
Well, the citizen science that I most partake in is the submission of checklists on the increasingly popular website eBird. And eBird really, I think, has provided a great engine for people to, get motivated and get out there and submit checklists. We talk about how there's not necessarily rewards, physical rewards, although there are many, I think, as a psychotherapist, there are many, mental health benefits to exercising, being outside, interacting with nature.
Mm-hmm.
But this site, other than being a great resource for helping you identify birds and where they hang out, it also has leaderboards, and that's a game,
right in itself.
Yes.
And I think there was a mention earlier by one of the birders, that element of competition, as well as community, and then the gratification part of it. Bill?
Yeah. On Tom's point about the breeding bird survey that he mentioned, that he and his wife do together, that's something that's been around, I think, about 60 years. It was started way back then in the 60s, I believe, maybe a little earlier. And it's challenging. You go, as he said, you start early in the morning, around before dawn, and then you proceed at half-mile intervals, and you identify everything you can at a stop of 3 minutes. So it's very specific what you do. The procedure is mapped out exactly the same for everyone, but the routes are randomized. So where you start was originally given to you by spin of the wheel, sort of, and then you follow the roads along for that distance, and hopefully repeated every year the exact same route.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes your data more comparable
right,
year to year. And but you have to know your songs.
Mm-hmm.
If you do this, you got to know what you're hearing
as
well
yes.
as seeing.
I'd love to pick up with that point.
It's a tricky one.
Mm-hmm. When we come back, we're going to take a very quick break here. Don't go far. We'll be right back. This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio.
The Gateway brings you the day's news each weekday from around the St. Louis region and the state capitals in Jefferson City.
Our schools are accredited. We don't need this bill.
And Springfield.
How many more years must pass before lawmakers see time is of the essence?
I'm Abby Larico. Join me each weekday for The Gateway on the STLPR app or wherever you get podcasts.
Welcome back. This hour, we're talking about all things birds and bird watching. In studio today, we have Ben Koenig and Bill Rowe, two birders with years of experience between them, and we're hearing from you too. For example, we heard from Carmen on Facebook, who said, "It's hard to pick just one." I think Carmen's talking about experiences. "I will never forget an experience from a canoe On the Quiver River, soon after I started birding, we saw a green heron fishing from a gravel bar and a great blue heron flying low just above the water. Then it landed in a tree and took off again as we got very close, and a large group of tiny wood ducks with their mom. We also heard from Kim on Facebook, who says, I love that bird watching is a hobby that rewards you for being present, still, and quiet. You can pause and be present just about any time, anywhere, and find a moment of delight in the birds around you. We also want to hear from you. Give us a call at 314-382-8255. That's 382-TALK. You can send email to talk@stlpr.org. Ben, you had said something about that being present when we first started talking about how you came into birding. And you've also talked about checklists, and you've got a very special one that goes all over the place. Tell us about that particular checklist.
Yes. Well, every birder has their life list, and some birders emphasize it more than others. And also, some birders are perfectly content to really dig into one region, for example, Missouri or North America, and focus on those birds, which, there are plenty to spend a lifetime enjoying. My approach to birding, for whatever reason, I decided that I was interested in bird species on a global scale. So my list of bird observations includes birds from most continents at this point.
Mm-hmm. And what's been the most interesting one that you've seen?
Well, no one really. It's not an easy question to answer.
Right,
maybe an impossible one.
Or maybe what is the one that you've most recently spotted outside St. Louis?
Well, I do have an answer. I think penguins in the subantarctic are probably the most exotic and special birds that I've been able to interact with and observe.
Mm-hmm.
That this was early in 2024 in January. I was on a small boat that took off from the southern tip of New Zealand, and we sailed south for many days and got to an island called Macquarie Island. And there we saw huge wattles of king penguins and another type of penguin called royal penguins. And at one point we were near a beach with nearly 1 million penguins.
Wow.
So that was quite a sight to behold.
Mm-hmm. Bill, have you also traveled the world and seen some birds that you just would never see here in the United States and specifically in the St. Louis area?
I have, but not nearly as much as Ben. I've been to Europe a few times, and sometimes, many times, my trips have been for other purposes, like going somewhere with my wife or helping to lead a school trip that wasn't a birding trip. It was just a trip for kids.
Yeah.
And then I would just have to catch an hour here, an hour there, and grab my binoculars and sneak off and do my birding that way. But I've had some specific trips that were very good. I've been to South Africa. I've been to the Far East. And also, I have only once been south of the border, but I'm going back again soon to Belize, and that's to help with a specific birding trip.
Right.
That's for St. Louis Audubon Society.
Mm-hmm. And to bring it closer to St. Louis, we have Cheryl, who is calling from South St. Louis with a favorite place to share. Cheryl, welcome to St. Louis on the Air.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course.
You were talking about favorite places to watch birds, and I guess mine's a COVID keeper. In COVID, as an educator, I was at home teaching children online, and the birds captured my attention. And so my favorite place ever is the backyard. We've had as many as 29 different species fly in and out of our backyard for feeding stations, or roosting, or nesting, and that's just it's a great place to start, and I just hope to always continue.
Mm-hmm. And so having that many species come through your yard, is that something that you noticed, that you were seeing a lot of different species and then you started putting things out for birds to come and enjoy, or was it the other way around?
I think it was probably my interest in trying to offer things that different types of birds would like.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you've got your safflower seeds, you've got your sunflower seeds, you've got your corn that, oh my goodness, I think every bird in the world likes to eat the crushed corn.
Mm-hmm.
But, you try to offer different foods and different kinds of feeding stations too, so that your starlings don't invade your space or your bluebirds, that kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's different types of feeders to learn from and learn about, and different types of food. And again, it's just been a real thrill for me to be able to do that. We were in St. Charles for a while, and now we've relocated to South St. Louis, and we're hoping to draw such a strong string of species to our yard again.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for calling, Cheryl.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yes.
Thanks.
We also have Matt, who is calling from St. Louis. Matt, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was just going to kind of echo some people as far as good birding locations. Tower Grove Park is great. I also like to bird a lot in Forest Park. Just there's a lot of different habitat types there. And I think, birding's it's something that, you can carry over into your life. When you're out birding a lot, it often involves, patience, looking or waiting for a particular bird you might be trying to see. And then, when you're watching birds as well, you have to look for different patterns and field markings for identification. So it really, I think, is a skill that can help improve your observation, and you can carry that into the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And birds are also just a great gateway into nature at large, I would say. When you find yourself out, you might go out looking for birds, but sometimes a bird walk can really quickly turn into a tree walk or another avenue, of exploring nature.
Mm-hmm. And Matt, do you think, given all of those things that you've cited about what bird watching entails, do you think that temperamentally you were already sort of predisposed to this kind of activity, or have you found that birding has actually sort of changed how you approach things, even outside, looking for birds in trees and whatnot?
Yeah, I would definitely say so. Before I really got into birding, I had a pretty strong outdoor background, just not really in birding. But once I, started incorporating, birding into my habits and things like that, I would say that, I started noticing, just different, paying attention to finer details, I would say, since, when you're looking at birds, some can be relatively small, like especially a lot of birders would, say, like trying to identify warblers. They're very small birds that might have very minute differences in patterns that, you really have to look closely in order to identify. So I think it does, really help with your observation skills.
Right. Matt, thank you for calling.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bill, in the years that you have been a birder, what are some of the changes that you've witnessed over the years that could either be in the bird populations or in the population of bird watchers themselves?
Well, for the latter, there's no question that there's a lot more people now than there used to be who are interested and even out there doing field trips and so on.
Mm-hmm.
I think when I started out as a young guy, it was fairly unusual. It wasn't really way out there, but it was pretty unusual. You had to explain yourself a lot if you were walking around and out in the country with binoculars on. You had to have a story ready to tell.
Right.
And but I think nowadays there's a lot more publicity about it, and there's truthfully a lot more people out there, and since COVID, it's even maybe doubled again. Because people wanted something that could get them out and out of doors and having something productive to do.
Mm-hmm. Ben, you're nodding your head when there was mention of COVID, and then for you too. do you find yourself getting into conversations with people about this pastime, and how do they respond to it?
Well, yes, I have noticed there are a lot of birders, especially, on social media platforms. You're just seeing more, more content around it and interest. Still, a lot of people I talk to trying to maybe rope some friends into a birding trip. They're like, "Are you crazy?" There are those populations that we're still yet to win over as birders, and that's okay. But definitely a lot more interest these days.
Mm-hmm. We had Jane who emailed us and said, "I love looking for wildlife in Forest Park, particularly birds. My husband and I have a fun contest during the summer, counting great white egrets we spot as we traverse the park on our way to and from daily errands. On Saturday, January 4th, which was over the weekend, a bald eagle swept across Jefferson Lake and landed in a nearby tree, as if coming to greet me. It is only the third time I've seen one in the park, so I was thrilled. This magnificent bird seemed quite content, allowing me to observe him at close range for about 30 minutes. Bill, have you formed relationships with birds, that you've seen on a regular basis?
No. To be honest, I don't think birds form relationships of the same type we do.
Okay, sure.
They may be interested in something you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
They may be curious about you, especially if you make a noise that they wonder what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, that's not to get a sidebar here, but that's one way you can get better looks at little birds sometimes is by making funny noises like psh, 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 that kind of thing.
Okay.
And they'll be curious about what's going on. They'll pop up out of the grass or out of the bushes for a better look.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can get a better look.
Right. Well, that's perfect for radio.
Right. But I think an eagle might be merely tolerant.
Okay.
of what you're doing.
There's some wishful thinking involved there.
Well, I'm not dismissing that idea. It's great that somebody can be close and watch an eagle for that length of time.
Right.
But they aren't, if they're not skittish and they're happy where they are and happy to let you be where you are, that's great.
How much are you using your ears, Ben?
Quite a bit.
Okay.
All the time.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Is there a really interesting bird call you've heard?
I was going to ask Bill the same question.
Yeah.
We're talking about bird calls.
Mm-hmm.
I think rails have interesting calls, kind of like a rattle or two stones clicking together rapidly. I think that's kind of cool.
Right.
And also, if I hear that, I get really excited because rails are extremely difficult to observe in most situations.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a bird I'll be listening for a lot.
Yeah. So as we wrap this conversation, there's a lot more that we could be talking about, but we are in winter, which maybe, Ben, as you're asking people to go out bird watching with you, that's what's eliciting the crazy comment.
Absolutely.
But what are the best birds to see in the remaining winter months, Bill?
Well, the best birds to see are the ones that are either right there at your home, at your feeders, or practically anything that's out there in the countryside now. And the things that I would be most excited about seeing are not the same ones that a beginning birder would be. For cold weather like this can bring some really cool birds down from much farther north. Like you've heard of gulls, right?
Yes.
Well, there are gulls that may show up at riverlands that are very rare. And that's something that bird watchers go to look for, and it's fun to see them.
Yeah.
But you could only find them at times like this. But otherwise, you can go out and you can still find lots of colorful birds. You can find, for example, if you go looking for a day and you see bluebirds in the snow are a whole lot different from bluebirds in the spring. They pop. Even robins too. Their colors pop in a way that they don't in the warmer weather. So,
birders Bill Rowe and Ben Koenig, thank you so much for joining us today.
This episode was produced by Emily Woodbury.
Audio engineering and podcast design by Aaron Dorr.
Our executive producer is Alex Hoyer.
St. Louis on the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio. Understanding starts here.
Do you find yourself regularly listening to episodes of St. Louis on the Air? Suggest us to a friend you think might enjoy our conversations. And leave us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts on the App Store. It's the simplest way to help people discover our show. Thanks.
St. Louis Public Radio is a member-supported service of the University of Missouri St. Louis.